Ah, Istanbul, the city of cats. Literal cats. If you've ever strolled those ancient cobbled streets, you'll know the real locals are feline. But this week, it wasn't the street cats making headlines. No, it was two-legged politicians attempting what they call peace talks. Adorable. Today on Further Record, we're sharpening our claws on the grand theater that was the May 2025 Russia-Ukraine peace talks. Or should I say, the peace talkish. Because while one leader showed up, the other ghosted harder than a cat hearing the word vet. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, tail high and diplomatic briefcase in paw, flew to Ankara, Turkey's capital. That's right. He got on a plane, crossed borders, and made the journey himself, despite the obvious risks. From there he sent a hand-picked delegation to Istanbul, where negotiations were to take place. We're going to claw through the fluff, shred the headlines, and figure out why this so-called summit smelled like it was hosted in a litter box full of broken promises. Let's set the scene. Dolmabahce Palace in Istanbul, a sprawling Ottoman-era fantasy of chandeliers, velvet curtains, and ceilings so high even cats can't reach them. If diplomacy were about optics alone, this would have been a 10 out of 10. But spoiler alert, it's not. Ukrainian President Zelensky didn't just zoom it in from a bunker. He left his war-torn country, flew into Ankara, and from there coordinated a delegation to take part in what the world hoped would be a meaningful dialogue. That, humans, is what we call showing up. In feline terms, it's when you actually come to the door when someone opens a fresh can of tuna. Meanwhile, Vladimir, where's Waldo Putin, decided to remain comfortably nestled in Moscow, far from any risk of accountability or compromise. He dispatched his diplomats like pawns on a chessboard, hoping no one would notice that the king was missing. It's like inviting two cats to settle territory disputes over the best sunbeam, and one sends a hairball with a memo. Let's be clear. President Zelensky arriving in Turkey wasn't just a PR move. It was a signal, a declaration, a diplomatic yowl across the world stage. I'm here. I'm willing. Let's talk peace. From Ankara, his team headed to Istanbul to meet the Russians face to face. Not on a battlefield, but at a table. That takes courage. It also takes trust, something that's in shorter supply than gourmet pâté in a shelter kitchen. And Putin. Oh dear. The man who once posed shirtless on horseback has now apparently lost his appetite for public engagement, and peace, and probably horses. Putin's attitude. Da, I will attend, just not in person, or today, or ever. This is classic avoidance behavior. We cats know it well, like when we knock a glass off the table and then pretend to examine a speck on the floor like, "What? Me? No idea what you're talking about." By not showing up, Putin left his underlings to swat away Ukraine's proposal for a 30-day ceasefire. A modest ask, considering Russia's role in flattening entire cities. The Kremlin's answer? A flat-out niet, coated in layers of imperial nostalgia and denial. There's something to be said about the dignity of diplomacy, even when the chances of success are as slim as a sphinx in a snowstorm. Ukraine's team came prepared, not just with demands, but with hope, a ceasefire, a path forward, a chance to release 1,000 prisoners from each side, a flicker of something humane in a war that's been anything but. Meanwhile, the Russian representatives strutted in like cats who believe they own the neighborhood, despite never paying rent. They dismissed the ceasefire, doubled down on territorial demands, and acted like the victims of a situation they created. That's not diplomacy. That's gaslighting in gold-plated rooms. And yet, the meeting happened. That matters, because even a single conversation can sometimes open the tiniest crack in the wall. And if there's one thing cats are good at, it's squeezing through cracks. Still with me? Good, because this is the part where you do your bit. Tap that like button like it's a dictator's ego, fragile and in need of popping. Subscribe so you don't miss the next time I shred global affairs like they're the back of Grandma's couch. And hit that bell icon so you're always first to know when someone's trying to rebrand war crimes as strategic repositioning. And hey, share this video. If enough of us call out the cowardice, maybe the world will stop rewarding it. Let's talk results. What came out of these Istanbul talks? Well, some progress, at least symbolically. The prisoner exchange was approved. 1,000 captives each. That's not nothing. That's families reunited. That's trauma momentarily paused. But let's not confuse a gesture with a solution. This wasn't peace. It was a pause button with a shaky internet connection. The Vatican, ever the hopeful kitten, offered itself as the next venue for talks. And bless Pope Leo XIV. At least he's trying. But let's be honest. We've seen this before. The grand locations, the hopeful headlines, the lavish spreads no one touches because everyone's too busy posturing for the cameras. If peace could be conjured by marble floors and Latin hymns, we'd be living in paradise. But peace takes more than piety. It takes guts. It takes presence. And it takes leaders who show up. So why didn't Putin come? Strategically, it's obvious. He avoids real negotiations the same way I avoid a bath. Being at that table would have meant acknowledging Ukraine's agency, something he still refuses to do. But psychologically, let's not underestimate the power of shame. Dictators often flee the scene of the mess they made, hoping their absence will magically absolve them. Putin didn't come because he couldn't control the room. He couldn't dictate the script. And he certainly couldn't stomach sitting across from a nation that refuses to bow. And that's the real takeaway here. Zelensky showed spine. Putin showed fear. One acted like a leader. The other? Like a spoiled kitten who just got told no for the first time in his life. Now you might be thinking, why should I care? I'm not in Ukraine. I'm not in Russia. I'm just trying to survive inflation and figure out why my cat keeps yelling at the fridge. But here's the thing. What happens at those tables? What gets said? Who shows up and who doesn't? It affects everything. Energy prices, global security, cyber warfare, the very idea of truth. Every time a coward skips a peace talk, the world slides a little closer to chaos. Every time a leader takes a risk and shows up, the world claws back a little bit of hope. So yes, you should care. Because you live in this global litter box too. And if the stink gets bad enough, no one escapes it. So let's wrap this furball of a summit with one last recap. President Zelensky flew to Ankara. He coordinated and sent a delegation to Istanbul. They showed up. They talked. They proposed a ceasefire. And they did it while the missiles were still flying back home. President Putin, he stayed home. Again. And the world saw it. This has been further record, where we don't just cover the news. We claw it open and show you what's rotting inside. News, nonsense, and a no-tolerance policy for cowardice. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and scratch that share button like it owes you rent. Until next time, stay fierce, stay informed, and remember, diplomacy isn't about who speaks loudest. It's about who shows up with a clean conscience and their claws retracted. Just enough.